Hey yo, hey, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey, hey, be a way, oh, hey yo, hey yo, hey yo. Remember me, when the sun comes up in the morning sky. There I will be, soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me.
Good morning and happy Tuesday to you. I hope that this week has gotten started wonderfully for you and that everything is kind of beginning to come to fruition, that which you have asked for and that which you have attempted to manifest in your life. Today we're talking about the courage of tear, and we're gonna cover it from two aspects, but that's in just a minute. Before we get started, we're going to talk about, if you haven't had a chance yet, now is a great time to consider following and subscribing to one of our video platforms, to include, and most certainly, newrealitytv.com. newrealitytv.com, a new streaming channel which offers a multitude of different programs that can provide you with a very different perspective on your spiritual path to help you come to find peace and comfort within your own mind. So check them out. Huge selection of different programs and different types of programming that can help you. That may give you that one piece of intellect or knowledge that you need to find that mental balance that you're searching for. If you haven't had a chance and you would like to, by all means, if you have some spare coins, drop them in our tip jar. We're always looking for donations and very much appreciate everything we get, as it goes towards directly to us going out and helping others and certainly putting together this program and this platform at which to broadcast this message with. Finally, for those of you who may need an extra ear to bend and just looking for some help to find your path, by all means, check out my website, norsewhispers.com. There you can also find /coaching, and there is my life coaching service that's available that can help. I'm here. All right, so let me know. As always, this morning we have got the Facebook Live chat open for us to communicate. So if you have a question, something that's spurring in your mind, by all means, feel free to drop it in the chat. Well, as I mentioned, today we're talking about the courage of tear, and we're talking about the two different aspects of the courage of tear. So the first level of courage, I should say, is the intrinsic courage. And this is where we're going to look at ourselves and we're going to evaluate ourselves in our own mind. We're going to eliminate stereotyping, dogma, shame, guilt, all of that. All we're going to do is look at our values. What are our values? What do we hold true? As I always mention, my great-grandfather uses the idea of a well, and I love the analogy, but it's a well with rocks at the bottom. The rocks are beautiful rocks. They're decorated, painted in such a way that they're very appealing. And those are our values, whether those values be honesty at all costs, whether those be courage to take on the new challenges and the new environments, whatever that collection of rocks that we have is what we are, is who we are. All of our decisions, when our brain is thinking about stuff and we're trying to make a decision within our lives, this is what we're going to look at, is these rocks at the bottom of this well. those rocks are placed, some of those rocks are placed by other people. They're placed by other people with whom we've extended some level of authority to. Most often than not, these are the authority figures in our lives, particularly those that are in our lives when we're younger. And what I mean by being placed by others is that as we are observing the experiences that we have here on this physical realm, we observe what works and what doesn't, what makes us feel comfortable and what doesn't. And as a young child, we don't have the ego and the bravado just yet to kind of interrupt or intercept these values from being transferred from the individual with whom we are experiencing, typically visually. These are authority figures such as parents, teachers, whomever are in our lives, and that are providing some level of structure, some level of societal structure that we then incorporate as part of our values. Elders are a great source of that original value, having those values being placed into our lives. Now remember, as I mentioned before, all of these values are used in our everyday decisions, whatever that may be, whether we like pizza or we don't like pizza, whether we like pineapple on our pizza. All of these micro decisions every day, even to get through a cup of coffee nowadays, are made by looking at these values. Now, in our lives, there's a lot of times where ego and bravado, because of some perceived notion, our ego and our bravado may stir the water and therefore make it murky. Ergo, we no longer can really have a reference point of these values at the bottom of our well. So we struggle to make decisions based on those. We simply make decisions based on kind of the societal flow, or what we think is the societal flow. This is more or less this whole idea of mob rules. Mob rules says we don't need to worry about our particular values. We just need to go with what everybody around us is going with. It's kind of the mob mentality, if you will. Now, the thing about mob mentality, and there are many other times in our lives where our water is just really murky, so it's hard for us to find what our values are. We may struggle with that, and we may make quite a few decisions based on not being able to see those values, not being able to refer to those rocks for whatever level. Now, the good news is that in addition, we can maintain our own rock pile, right? So as we get older, our values will change, right? Our certain values just kind of fall away, and other values are replaced by the groups that we have around, again, whoever we're assigning this authority to, this level of authority to put their value in our well. So, many times this could be friends. Particularly the closer the friend, the more apt we are to adopt some of their rocks, right? There are other people who may try to put rocks in by force, and that's neither here nor there. So, is what it is. And so we have to manage that. We ultimately are in charge of what rocks go into our rock pile and which ones are denied. We always have that authority. Remember, we are in charge. Even if we've given authority to other people and other individuals around us, we always maintain the authority to control what values go into this well. And we can dictate a no or a yes, depending on what the situation what we feel the situation calls for. So our intrinsic courage says that we have to look past our bravado, we have to look past the ego, and actually see what's really in the well. What real values do we have? What do we think is valuable? Loving another person. When we're loving another person, do we display that emotion? Do we tell them so that we're becoming more vulnerable? Are we willing to be vulnerable? All of these things come into this decision making based on what's in the well. What are our values that have been installed? So many times throughout our lives, we will be challenged as to what is in our well, and are we willing to stick to it? Are we willing to be dedicated to those rocks? It's completely on us. Now, the good news is, as I mentioned before, the rocks can be changed. Quite often, as we said, as we grow, as we find ourselves in different environments, these values may change. And that's okay. It's, believe it or not, it's meant to be very modifiable, right? We can add rocks, we can take away rocks, we can shuffle rocks over to the side to where they're not so important, whatever the case, right? My grandfather also points out that this rock arrangement becomes a very beautiful mosaic of who you are. And I love that, because I think that is exactly what makes us us. Now, this value stack then responds to the chemistry that's released when we receive a level of emotional energy through our emotional filters, right? And so these emotional filters will then send the signal to the heart. The heart, before it releases the hormones, it checks the values. Now, again, if the heart can't see the values because our water is murky, or we've got a lot going on, our brain is processing way too much stuff, we've got things rattling around in our head, or there's something weighing heavy on our heart, all of these things affect the water purity, or the water clarity, I should say, right? So we could run out and not see it, and therefore the heart just simply releases what the brain tells it to. Hey, I need anger. And the heart, because it can't see the rocks, it says, all right, anger it is. Up you go. And our brain then translates this to be anger, because that's what it ordered. However, in the best case, if we're not looking for anger and we've got more of a clear pool in our well, then when the heart sends, or the brain sends the heart the communication that says, hey, release sadness, our values then come into play and say, well, wait a minute, hold on. Have we considered? And the brain goes, well, no, we didn't really think about that, but okay, let's do it that way. And instead of getting sadness, we get, maybe a disappointment, maybe a more dialed back version of sadness, not the overall in-depth, ugly kind of cry, kind of sadness, right? We get this just disappointment, right? Okay, so that's essentially how we get the recognition of our emotions. So being willing to be honorable and courageous and look inside ourselves past all the nonsense that's been placed into us, past societal ego, past intrinsic ego, past the bravado, of course, that attempt to match some societal standard that may or may not apply to us. Most often than not, does not apply to us. So we get this bravado that kind of brings a, beat chest kind of thing, and poof, just to make sure that we fit in societally. So that's bravado. And we have to look past it for us to be honest with ourselves, to be able to figure out what is our values And then what are our feelings about these different things in our lives? And the only way we can truly see that is to be able to see those rocks. So clarifying the water is very critical in us growing, in evolving into that next level of person. Okay, so the second level, or the second angle, I should say, of courage, of course, is the courage to be ourselves. Now, with all of what we just discussed of our intrinsic courage, extrinsic courage is simply the display of who we are. All of those things being what they are, we have found a way to intrinsically find our well and be able to see through the water to the rocks and establish our values. Our values, when we start making decisions based on those values, we fall into this thing called the authentic space. Now, the authentic space is simply that which surrounds us, where we're no longer pretending. We don't have any masks. Society and private life and professional life and all of our different lives that we lead every day all now play by the same set of rules. You look the same, right? You are identically the same. There's no change just because of the societal environment you may find yourself in. Many people tell me that this is very complicated, it's very hard, because, this, that, and the other thing. Well, it's not. Right? Once we fall into our authentic space and we're looking at the well, and our decisions then and our behaviors are all based on that well, then we're falling and we're living in an authentic space. When we are spot on and we are thinking exactly what we are feeling, this is called the line of congruence, congruent line. And it is essentially living your heart, performing and behaving your heart, what your heart feels. Now, before we get too involved, because many people's first question is, what if people are evil? People are not evil. No one is, ever. We are all beings of light. Now, well, what about his actions? Well, the only place in all of the cosmos at which exists negative energy is the physical realm, and it's only brought to us by the human mind. The human mind is the only one capable of changing polarity from neutral to evil or dark. Not even dark, because dark is just simply unilluminated. Changing energy from a neutral to a negative. Human mind is the only place that can happen. And it's most often done in a unexplained or misunderstood receiving of energy that we have no idea what to do with, right? So we act out these thoughts that we may have, and they're fueled by energy that the human mind redirects incorrectly, okay? And so that's where we really become. Our natural state as human beings, as living forms, is to express love, to embrace harmony, and to live a comfortable, content life. That's it, right? Never, not once, has the cosmos said, go and do something to affect this other person. And this is really where I think we humans have gotten kind of off the rails, in that there are certain teachings in the world, and we will not name them, but everyone knows who they are, who teaches that if this other group doesn't believe the same way I believe, then they have to change. They have to be changed, whether that be by death or that be by teachings, right? And they've kind of used both mechanisms throughout the millennia to enact that policy. Well, that policy is now forcing my will and my way on someone else. This is kind of the underlying foundation for a lot of societal woes. This is also the manifestation of the first time, one of the first times we see negative energy. Because this is negative energy. We're taking our guidance, our wisdom that we've received, and we're forcing it on someone else. This is where the whole process kind of begins to break down a little bit. I am not your keeper. I am not your master, or, nothing like that. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm simply here to teach, and then you take what you feel fits in your spiritual path, your spiritual growth. I'm not going to say, well, if you didn't listen to me and you didn't do exactly what I said, then you're bad, right? That's not what spirituality is. That's what religion is. Spirituality is simply that which we seek answers to our questions. It is the cycle of life that exists between Sol, the sun, and Mani, the moon. All right? And that's what it is. So Sol, of course, bringing us intellect and wisdom and guidance in the form of illuminated energy. Mani, of course, providing light, a little bit of light through the darkness, answering those questions, allowing us to ponder and think about it, and now forming more questions at which to then further drive our quest for wisdom and knowledge. Right? So, down it goes in waves, much the same way that we see, say, in the ocean, when we just have these large swells that are moving across vast ocean. So, the courage to be ourselves means that we're foregoing bravado. We are foregoing the societal expectations, maybe, and willing to express who we are in a non-negative fashion. In other words, if my spiritual influences are telling me that I need to go above and beyond and force this other person to believe what I believe, I know that that's not coming from the cosmos. That's coming from my mind. So there's some negative energy that I've absorbed somewhere, and we got to get rid of that, right? So we have to be able to look past the bravado, past the ego, into this well, to identify who we are, become authentic, and live authentically. Right? So, in my great grandfather's day and age, they had 9 noble virtues that their whole life centered around. And that was things like honor and truthfulness and courage and hospitality and industrialness, and these types of traits that they had put in their well, and that was their cornerstones. Man, that's what they made their mosaic from. And then they lived that life. They lived according to those cornerstones. Everything they did was kind of in that direction. Because we see when we're not authentic, when we're living outside the authentic space, when our mind and our heart is kind of out here and a little bit towards the left or a little bit to the right, what we see quite frequently is this stress building up in the mind. It may not register to us. We may go, I'm doing this because I have to do it, or I feel I have to do it, whatever the case, and I'm living this way, and this is me societally, all right? But in our mind, we're actually building a very small level of stress for every time we do it. And that stress we've referred to before in the whole throughput of our minds that stress becomes the silt along the bottom of the pipe, right? And so when we experience a very high level of psychological trauma, that whole trauma can't get through the bandwidth. It can't fit in the pipe anymore, right? And therefore it processes and it breaks a lot of things, because we remember that the top of the pipe is our cognitive space. It allows us to break things down into more manageable chunks. That's what our cognitive space does. It allows us to do that. Well, if we are overloaded with psychological trauma, that goes away. That gets filled up with whatever our psychological trauma is. The silt stays. Until we deal with it directly, the silt stays. So it moves everything up now into that cognitive space. And then if we find that we get overrun, right? So we just can't get to psychological trauma through this pipe of bandwidth, if you will. We find this energy spilling into the rest of our brain, which then can be interpreted and displayed as physiological symptoms, right? So we start having tremors, or we have anxiety attacks, or we have some other types, sweaty palms, whatever. All of this is an effect of our throughput not being able to carry all of the data involved in the psychological trauma. So these two forms of courage are critical to helping us obtain and maintain our mental space. When we begin to live more authentically, we're starting to clear out that silt so that the trauma can now shift down. We have cognitive space. We receive a psychological trauma, but now we can begin to break it down. Why? Because we have the ability to apply a little bit of thinking to this trauma, to this psychological energy that's just the faucets on coming into the brain, right? So it's very important that we're able to clear that silt, adjust the trauma, use the headspace to now kind of work ourselves through whatever trauma we may be facing. So super critical, both parts of this display that Tyr offers us an example of. As we all know, Tyr was the one who put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir. That Fenrir may be chained to prevent the destruction of all the realms. They put a chain around Fenrir to hold him in place until, of course, Ragnarok, in which case him and pretty much everybody else will rise up and have that one last final battle. So Tyr, being the courageous fella he was, put his hand in the mouth of Fenrir and had his hand bitten off. It's standard courage stuff, right? But again, there was a lot of intrinsic reflection. There was a lot of displaying who he was. And so he's the real example that we can follow now to begin to live our lives authentically, who we are at the core of who we are, right? So super critical. So today, I want you to be you, because you are such a blessing, and I know I and many others very much appreciate you being in the world, and we appreciate your perspective. We just love having you here, so really appreciate you. So I encourage you to embrace yourself, but remember to maintain our space of where we're not crossing over to control or dictate or mandate anything for anyone else. We simply offer who we are, what we know, and they can take it or leave it. It's up to them. But allowing them their own freedom to do what they deem is accurate and correct. All right? So that's a really big piece, and I hope that you all take a little bit of time today to recognize that. I want to give a huge shout out again to the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center. What a wonderful opportunity to protect and to just support Native women around the world. Of course, Alaska kind of focused on Alaskan women, Native women. And so I very much appreciate all of their efforts in keeping our mothers, our sisters, our aunties, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our daughters safe, and building a world where we can find mutual respect and mutual love. So I'm very encouraged to be for them to continue their great mission, particularly here in Alaska. So huge shout out to them. For the rest of you, my friends, I wish you the very best Tuesday. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Tomorrow we talk about the wisdom of Odin. And so I look forward to that as always. In the meantime, you have yourself a wonderful Tuesday. We will see you again tomorrow. Love and light. Love each other. Be kind.